I never thought I'd see the day when I'd feel like a stranger in my own home. Jane and I had been together for almost 8 years, married for 5, and for most of that time, everything felt normal. Comfortable, predictable, maybe even boring in a way I now realize was a blessing. Lately, though, something had shifted. It started small. She stopped texting me during the day, stopped sharing those little things that used to make me laugh, like the dumb meme she'd forward at exactly 10 a.m. She started spending longer hours at work, claiming projects, deadlines, meetings, but there was a weird tension in the air, like she was hiding something. I brushed it off at first. I told myself I was overthinking, that everyone goes through phases. But when she started snapping at me for the smallest things, like forgetting to take out the trash or misplacing a charger, I felt a knot in my stomach I couldn't shake. Something wasn't right, and deep down, I feared I already knew what it was. The thing is, the first signs of trouble were subtle. A missed call here, a secretive laugh at her phone there. But my gut? It doesn't lie. It hit me out of nowhere. I was looking for an old receipt in her purse, the kind of mundane, harmless thing I used to rummage through when we were shopping together, and that's when I saw it, a message on her phone from someone saved as M. My stomach sank before I even read it. The words were casual. Flirty. Way too familiar for someone who wasn't supposed to exist in our lives. I didn't react right away. I stared at the screen, heart hammering, trying to convince myself it was nothing, maybe a coworker, maybe an old friend. But the next week, patterns started forming. Texts late at night, sudden coffee breaks that lasted hours, and that laugh, oh God, that laugh she never used to hide before. It was the small things that finally pushed me over the edge. The way she'd step out for fresh air whenever I came into the room, or how her eyes darted to her phone at the slightest vibration. Every instinct screamed at me, and deep down, I knew I was about to find out the truth. I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, she said she was taking a late shift at work, but I had a gut feeling. I waited, half pacing, half convincing myself not to snoop. Eventually, curiosity and maybe dread won. I opened her laptop while she was in the shower. What I found made my world tilt. Emails, messages, photos, things you should never see from the person you trust the most. There she was, smiling at someone else in pictures she'd hidden from me, planning weekends I thought were just girls' trips. The reality hit like a punch to the chest. My hands shook. I felt sick. I wanted to throw up, scream, cry, everything at once. The woman I married, the one I trusted with my life, was lying to me every single day. And worse, she seemed proud of her little secrets. I couldn't hold it in any longer. That night, I waited until she got home, every second dragging like an eternity. When she walked in, I just laid it out. Every message, every photo, every lie. I expected shock, guilt, maybe tears. Instead, she froze for a second, then rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on," she said, voice dripping with annoyance. "You really think I'm doing anything serious? It's just fun. Don't make it a bigger deal than it is." I felt my anger spike. Fun? You've been sneaking around, lying every day, planning trips, texting him constantly. That's not fun, that's betrayal. She shrugged like it was no big deal. Then came the excuses. You've been distant, I needed attention, it's not like I care about him that much. Every word was another knife in my chest. The woman I thought loved me was spinning stories, justifying cheating as if it were harmless. After she stormed off to her bedroom, leaving me standing in the living room, I couldn't even think straight. My chest ached, my hands trembled, and my mind was a whirlwind of disbelief. How could someone I loved, trusted, and built a life with just throw it all away? I felt everything at once: rage at her audacity, sorrow for myself, and a numbness that made it hard to breathe. Every memory of us together started twisting in my head. Was our marriage ever real? Or had I just been living in a lie? Sleep didn't come that night. I kept replaying every smile, every joke, every little I love you, wondering if it had all been fake. The hardest part wasn't even her cheating, it was realizing that the person I thought I knew, the woman I thought I married, didn't exist anymore. The days that followed were surreal. I watched her move through our home like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just shredded everything we had. Every smile felt hollow, every word suspicious. I found myself checking her phone, noticing little lies. She worked late again, but her location said otherwise. Even mundane things became unbearable. Meals felt like silent tests, her laughter with friends sounded like betrayal echoing in my ears. I started questioning everything I thought I knew, our conversations, her moods, even my own judgment. I realized that trust wasn't just broken. It had been pulverized, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't patch it with explanations or excuses. The foundation of our life together felt like sand slipping through my fingers, and I was standing there, helpless, watching it collapse. I couldn't take it anymore. One evening, I confronted her again, armed this time with every proof I'd gathered, the messages, the emails, the photos. I laid them all on the table, watching her face carefully. At first, she scoffed, "You really need to calm down. You're overreacting." But as I pointed to each piece of evidence, her stories started to crumble. One by one, the excuses fell apart. "He's just a friend, it didn't mean anything, you're imagining things." Her voice trembled only slightly, but the defiance remained. And then came the real kicker, she admitted to more than I ever imagined. Trips I thought were work-related, secret dinners, late-night meetups. It wasn't just emotional cheating, it was months of lies, and I felt every shred of control over my life slip away. After that confrontation, I felt like I was drowning in my own life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even think without seeing her with him in my mind. Every corner of our home, our photos, our couch, the kitchen table, felt contaminated with betrayal. I oscillated between rage and despair. Some moments, I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, throw things, make her feel even a fraction of the pain she caused. Other moments, I just curled up on the couch, staring at nothing, letting the emptiness swallow me whole. I realized something terrifying. I had lost not just her, but the version of myself that trusted, that believed in us. I was unrecognizable, trapped between anger, grief, and a gnawing sense of humiliation. After a week of barely functioning, I finally forced myself to step back and think. The constant anger and despair were suffocating me, and I realized that staying in that state wouldn't help me decide anything, it would only eat me alive. I started journaling, just spilling every thought, every hurt, every betrayal onto paper. It was ugly and raw, but it helped me see patterns in my own reactions. I began asking myself the hard questions. Could I ever trust her again? Could I forgive what she did, or would it always haunt me? And, most importantly, what did I truly want for myself? For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control. I couldn't change what she did, but I could decide what I was willing to tolerate and what my life should look like from here. I knew a reckoning was coming. I couldn't keep floating in limbo, torn between hope and fury. One evening, I sat her down and said, calmly but firmly, "We need to figure out what happens next. This us cannot continue the way it is." She reacted like she was being accused of some minor wrongdoing, rolling her eyes and muttering, "You're overdramatic. Can't we just move on?" But I wasn't moving on, not without answers, not without honesty. I told her bluntly, I needed transparency, effort, and proof of real change, or this marriage was over. She laughed, cold, sharp, dismissive. "Change? I don't need to change. You're just insecure." That hit harder than anything, because it forced me to admit the truth I'd been hiding from myself. If she wasn't willing to meet me halfway, I couldn't save this marriage alone. I spent the next few days in quiet reflection, walking through our neighborhood alone, replaying every conversation, every betrayal. I realized that staying would mean constantly questioning her, doubting myself, and living in a shadow of what we used to have. I wasn't sure I could survive that kind of life. It was heartbreaking, but I made a decision. I had to put myself first. I couldn't wait for her to suddenly change or hope she'd realize what she'd thrown away. My life, my peace, my sense of self mattered more than clinging to something that was already fractured beyond repair. I told her calmly, I've made my choice. I'm leaving. I need to reclaim my life. She screamed, cursed, called me selfish, but deep down, I knew this wasn't selfish. It was survival. Leaving wasn't clean or easy. Packing my things felt like ripping pieces of my heart from our home. Every item, shirts, books, photos, carried memories that now stung like salt on an open wound. She yelled, cried, and tried to guilt me into staying, but I stood firm. The drive out of our neighborhood was surreal. The streets I'd walked 1,000 times suddenly felt foreign, like I was leaving not just a house, but a chapter of my life I'd believed would last forever. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and yet, beneath the pain, there was a strange sense of relief. I was taking back control. That night, in a small rented apartment, I sat in silence, exhausted, hollow, but finally safe from her lies. It was the first time in weeks I could breathe without the constant tension of suspicion and betrayal. The first few weeks alone were brutal. I cried at odd hours, replayed conversations in my head, and questioned my judgment. But slowly, I began reclaiming myself. I went for long walks, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and rediscovered hobbies I had pushed aside. Each small victory, making a meal for myself, laughing at a joke without feeling guilty, sleeping through the night, felt monumental. I realized that my life didn't have to be defined by her betrayal. The pain was real, but it wasn't permanent. I could grieve, learn, and still find moments of peace and joy. I started journaling more intentionally, not just venting, but tracking progress, reflecting on what I deserved, and envisioning the life I wanted moving forward. For the first time in months, I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. Looking back, the betrayal still hurts, but it also taught me things I couldn't have learned otherwise. I learned the importance of trusting my instincts. When something feels off, it usually is. I learned that love alone isn't enough if respect and honesty are missing. And most importantly, I learned that my well-being can't be sacrificed for the illusion of a relationship. I also realized that pain can be transformative. Losing her forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, my expectations, and my limits. I understood that forgiving someone else isn't the same as forgiving yourself. It's about reclaiming your life from the chaos they created. For anyone going through something similar, I'd say, it's okay to feel everything, to grieve, to be angry, but don't lose yourself in the process. Your life, your peace, and your dignity matter more than holding on to someone who betrayed you. Months have passed since I left. The raw anger has dulled, the constant ache has softened, and I've begun imagining a future that isn't defined by her lies. I'm learning to trust again myself first, then others. I'm discovering who I am outside of that marriage, and it feels like breathing after being underwater for years. I don't hate her, I'm beyond that, but I've accepted that we are irreparably different. She made her choices, I made mine. And in choosing myself, I've found a strange kind of freedom I never expected. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal is devastating, but it doesn't have to destroy you. Pain is temporary, growth is permanent. And though the scars remain, they remind me that I survived, I reclaimed my life, and I can move forward stronger, wiser, and finally at peace.